pushed my mother down the stairs on Christmas and my whole family thanked me. Every holiday with my mother was a hostage situation that we all pretended was voluntary. She had spent 30 years making everyone around her miserable while convincing herself she was the victim, and Christmas was her Super Bowl. My siblings and I had learned to tune her out years ago because fighting her only made things worse, but recently she had started targeting the grandchildren because we stopped giving her the reactions she craved. My niece Sadie had just turned 6 and she was the shyest, sweetest kid you'd ever meet, which made her the perfect target for a woman who fed on vulnerability like oxygen. Christmas morning started the way it always did, with my mother inspecting the gifts everyone brought her and finding something wrong with each one. "Oh, another candle. How thoughtful. I guess you forgot I'm allergic to strong scents," she said to my sister, who had spent weeks picking out something she thought Mom would love. She told my brother his kids were looking a little chunky and asked if they'd considered putting them on a diet, and when his wife tried to change the subject, my mother said, "I'm just being honest. Someone has to be." Then her eyes landed on Sadie, who was quietly playing with a doll in the corner trying to be invisible. "Sadie, sweetheart, come show Grandma your doll," my mother called out in that sickly sweet voice she used right before she destroyed someone. Sadie walked over slowly and held up the doll, a pretty little dark-skinned baby doll with curly hair that Sadie had been carrying around all morning. My mother tilted her head and said, "That's the doll you wanted? It's kind of ugly, don't you think? You didn't want a doll that looks like you?" Sadie's eyes started watering and my sister jumped up to intervene, but my mother cut her off with, "Oh please, I'm just teasing. She needs to toughen up or the world is going to eat her alive. You're raising her to be weak." My sister took Sadie to the kitchen to calm down, and I thought that would be the end of it, but my mother wasn't finished. She followed them and I heard her say, "You know, Sadie, when your mother was your age, she wasn't a little crybaby. I made sure of that." My sister came back into the living room with tears in her eyes and told Sadie to go play upstairs away from Grandma. For the next hour, my mother kept making comments about how sensitive kids are these days and how nobody can take a joke anymore. "I don't know what happened to this family," she announced to no one in particular. "I raised you all to be stronger than this, but I guess that's my fault for expecting too much." My brother tried to redirect the conversation to football, and she cut him off and said, "Don't change the subject when I'm talking. I taught you better than that." When my sister-in-law got up to check on the kids, my mother said loud enough for everyone to hear, "She's always running away from me. I don't know what her problem is. Maybe she's hiding something." The tension in the room was unbearable, and everyone was silently counting down the hours until we could leave. Then I noticed she kept glancing toward the stairs, and when she finally excused herself to use the bathroom, she went upstairs instead of using the one on the main floor. I didn't think much of it until 10 minutes passed, and she still hadn't come back down. That's when I realized Sadie was still up there too. I started walking toward the stairs, and my sister grabbed my arm and asked where I was going, and I told her I just wanted to check on Sadie. But as soon as I reached the top of the stairs, I heard my mother's voice coming from the guest bedroom, low and vicious in a way I had never heard before. "You think you can just ignore me? Your mother thinks she can keep you away from me, but I'm your grandmother, and you will respect me. Do you understand?" I heard Sadie crying and saying she was sorry over and over, and then I heard a sound that made me start running. I threw open the door and saw my mother with her hands wrapped around Sadie's arms, shaking her so hard her head was snapping back and forth. I crossed the room and ripped her backward with everything I had, and she stumbled toward the doorway as her feet got tangled in the rug at the top of the stairs. "How dare you put your hands on me?" she screamed.